there are a few problems that NU wants you to know if you plan on taking geometry as a freshman. One of those types of problems is this. And it looks extremely tricky, and like you would have to have way more knowledge than you have as an 8th grader to complete it. But I'm going to walk you through the steps to show you that you've already learned how to solve this problem. It's really the wording that makes it tricky. Read example 1 for me, please, Kingston.
When a baseball player hits a baseball to the air, compare the ball at each cycle that the ball is hit to the model of the projectile motion formula. If the ball is hit at each feet off the ground with an upward velocity of 47 feet per second, all of the forces on hit the ground to the is not correct.
Use the equation h equals negative 16t squared plus vt plus s. Find the parameters v and s from the description of the problem. What did I just read? It sounds like I just launched into some collegiate math problem. And the thing that makes it tricky is they're having you look at this. And you've never probably seen the projectile motion formula. Not until you get to physics in high school, maybe if you study in college. But they're giving you what the projectile motion formula is. And that's it. Underline the projectile motion formula. Underline this formula here. So they just gave it to you. What does that look like? What does it look like? Because it does look pretty similar. It looks kind of like the quadratic formula. It looks a little bit like ax squared plus bx plus c. Here's your squared first term. Here's your second term. Here's your third term. So even though they're making this like a huge weird name, you've already done problems like this. You just have to piece together the numbers. So the t, what does that stand for? It's the time that it takes for the objects to fall. And this is our answer. This is what we're looking for. So T is your answer. It's the time it takes the object to fall. Negative 16 is the effect. This is the part that gets really weird and sciencey. The negative 16 is the effect that gravity accelerating the projectile downward has. So it's the effect of gravity, and that 16 is a whole different number that they got beyond what I can tell you how they got the number. That's what they got for this equation. And then it's always going to be negative 16. You'd never have to change that. Why are you doing this problem? Because NU wants you to know, or to see if you know, how to connect a real-world application. V is the initial upwards velocity. Yeah. Why do they need what? It's just what the negative 16 stands for. The S stands for your starting height. And the H is the ending height. H is your ending height of the object. Ending height. Okay, so let's look up and see if we can piece together some stuff. They give us negative 16t squared, so that's my starting point. Write that here. That's already filled in. I don't have my value of v. What's the velocity upwards? The initial upwards velocity? It says 47 feet per second. So that's your initial velocity. Quiet, unprofessional. We said it was 47, so let's add 47t. Last thing I need to fill in is the starting height. What's the starting height? They say it's 3 feet off the ground. The ball is 3 feet off the ground, and then they drop it. Okay, so that's great, but I'm missing one thing. I'm missing the h. What do you think the height's going to be of the object after you drop it? Kieran? It's 0. So if you have a problem where it's measuring the velocity of an object, the height will always be 0. The velocity will, or the a in front of the t squared will always be negative 16. The two things you're going to have to change are the 47 and the 3, the b and the c. And this should be a t plus 3. T plus 3. Okay. So you just pieced together. The value for h was the last final piece. And why is it always 0 for every object? Because the ground is always at a height of 0. So it ends at the ground. It's not going to end below the ground. We're just going to say it hits the ground and stops there. You could give me hypotheticals and say like all sorts of stuff, but we're going to say it's always 0. I'm going to pause you. Where the ground is the ground. Pause. So let's look at this thing, and now that you have a trinomial, you can solve it. Is there anything to factor out of 16, 47, and 3? Silent yes or silent no? Can I factor a number or a variable out of 16, 47, and 3? I don't think so. 3 and 16 don't work, so that's kind of my clue that we're just going to move forward. Let's solve this thing, and let's vote. If you want to do grouping, give me a 1. If you want to do in, out, give me a 2. If you want to do grouping, give me a 1. In, out, give me a 2. Hands down. We're going to start with grouping. If you feel confident, and you really are really good at in-out method, you can kind of go ahead of me and work alongside my work and see if you get the same answer. So this is a negative 48. When you multiply 16 times 3, give me the factors of 48 that may work for this one. Addison. Yeah, I'm trying to add to 47, so the 48 minus 1 will get me there. Let's plug it in. Where do I put those numbers, Jackson? Yeah, right after the 16. So I'm going to place them, and doesn't matter the order. It doesn't matter the order because they're both going to be grouped in. So you could try to put the negative 1 first. It'll look a little different, but the answer will eventually be the same. Okay. The t.
I've just been pressing down.
The t, you mean? You can make the t a capital. You can make it x if you want, but at the end, make sure it's a t when you... Here, I'll make it a capital T. Okay. Help me factor something out of both binomials, Mariah. Okay. Mariah, could you just look at my board and see if there's something I can factor out of mine? It'll be similar. 8 would work. Is there something else though? I think 16 would work. 16 divided by 48 is, or 48 divided by 16 is 3. So let's factor out a negative 16. And you get t squared. And a t, thanks. T minus 3. Factor something out of the right side so it matches this time, Sasha. Yeah, I want to factor the negative 1 so I get a t minus 3 and not a t plus 3. Those match, so you can pull those binomials as one of your parts of the answer. Where does the other binomial come from? Colby?
Yeah, the binomial comes from the things divided by.
I'm gonna push your vocab. What are those things called? Rhymes with mactors or tractors. I thought of tractor after I said mactor, and that was a much better rhyme. So there's your factors. You're gonna combine them and make that. They still equal 0. So let's pull it out. And now we have to solve for t. Remember, the goal is to find how long it took this object to fall. T was the time. And we're going to get something that looks kind of funny. So let's pull out negative 16t minus 1, equal it to 0, and solve for that one. Wyatt, that's your second. Negative 16t equals 1. Divide by negative 16. You get t equals negative 1/16. Don't circle it yet. Just kind of keep that to the side. T equals negative 1/16. Let's find the other one, t minus 3. Zero product property tells me that this thing has to be 3. So you have two options. T, the time is either negative 1/16 seconds or 3 seconds. What do you think my answer is? Turn and talk to your partner. What's the answer? Why not though? Like why can't it be that one? Impossible, right? You can't. Well, you can't even have a negative second. Like you can't reverse time. 3, 2, 1. All right. What's my answer? Is it A or is it B? Andrew, what would you go with? And these are the only types of problems when you're factoring trinomials where you look at the two answers and you don't circle both. If they're having a real world application problem, you're probably only going to be able to have one of the answers. Negative 1/16 seconds does not make sense. You can't have a negative second. It's not at any point in your life will you have anything be negative seconds. Seconds are always positive. So if you have a word problem, you're likely going to just look through the two answers you found and choose the positive one. Elliot, put it down, please, if it's distracting you. T equals 3 seconds is your answer. You could cross this one out. Next example. Read it for me, Kylie.
How long does it take a left to hit the ground if the left end of a 72 foot tall building roof with an upward velocity of 24 feet per second?
Okay, go up to that equation they gave you. And remember the equation for projectile motion formula was negative 16t squared plus vt plus s. Rewrite this equation underneath the problem. I think on the geometry placement test for most of the high schools, I think they will give you this equation. So I don't think this is one you have to memorize. You just need to know what it means and plug things in. So where would I place the, or what number would be the velocity for this thing? Felix? 24 feet per second, and it tells me velocity. That works. Vienna, what would be my starting height then? Yeah. And what's my ending height, Kylie? What's my ending height that would go here? Yeah. It hits the ground at 0 feet. This looks like a ginormous problem with too high of numbers, so I'm thinking of factoring. What number could factor out of 16, 24, and 72? I think there's something. I see a 2. I'm hoping there's something maybe a little higher. What do you think, Jackson? I think 8 would work. Do you agree with that? If you had your hand up, let's try 8. And since the t squared is negative, what could I factor out along with the 8? If I want to make it positive, let's factor out a negative 8. And let's do 2t squared minus 3t minus 9. Cool. Next step, Elliot. If I'm doing the in-out method, what would I do? Or sorry, if I'm doing the boxing method, grouping. Sure. Okay. Give me factors of negative 18 that add to negative 3, Addison. That works. This negative 8, when you get to this point, you're only focusing on this part. And so I was kind of picky with having you bring it down, but you can essentially eliminate this negative 8 by dividing it on both sides. That's going to cancel it and make it a 0. So I really don't need to pay attention to the negative 8 at all. I'm really focused on the trinomial. Set it up like that. The darn T's. What would I factor out of the first binomial? And a? Yeah. What about the second one, Wyatt? So 2t plus 3 and t minus 3. Just by looking at this, what binomial should I use to find the answer? I can kind of mentally sift out the positive one ahead of time, Wyatt. Which one should I use? This one? Let's try it. Let's try this one, though. Remember, I don't want negative seconds, and that negative 3, I think is going to get me in trouble because it's going to make a negative 3 over 2. Yeah, that one can't be the time. So let's move on to t minus 3, and that would be 3 seconds. Vienna.
Where did the 6 come from? Where's the 6 up there?
6 times 3 is 18. So I took my factors and I placed this here. This is the trickiest part just because it's unusual. Like, it's the different step that we haven't done before. And you're used to making those your answers, but that's no longer how you factor if a is bigger than 1. I think that was what we talked about with the homework number 1 too. Your turn. Try this one on your own. I'll give you 2 minutes to set it up, and then I'll check your steps on. When you get this problem, I'm starting by writing the equation. So make sure you have this written below the problem. Tanner, get to work. Oh, yeah, put it on. Why are you on the next few steps? Okay, because I distracted you and you distracted me, and now we're back on track. If you're done with the problem, look at the board. If you are not done, just keep working, and if you're a bit stuck, you can track. This student did something really good that I did not add on to my notes, and it's the solution with the t. They made a cursive t, which makes it look less like a plus. So if you have the time for your velocity equation and you have to have the t in there, you can make it a cursive t, and it works to kind of make it look less like a plus. The students put 12 in for velocity, 10 for starting heights, and they factored out a negative 2. 8t squared minus 6t minus 5 is your trinomial you're left with. They found the factors of 40 and used 10 and 4. Negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6, so that works. 4t minus 5 and 4t minus 5 are the group, and they factored out a 2t and a 1. 2t plus 1, 4t minus 5. Kieran, which one would I use to get a positive answer? 2t plus 1 or 4t minus 5? This one's going to have a minus 1 when you bring it over. So be careful when it says plus and you make it equal to 0. You're going to have to make it a negative to bring it over. So you're actually going to use this guy, 4t minus 5. It adds 5 to that side. 4t would equal 5, and they divided by 4. 5/4 or 1 1/4 should be your answer. 5/4 or 1 1/4 seconds is the time it takes.